Hello and welcome to Jessie Bear Book Club Vlogs, where today we are talking about one of my favourite diaries, well, fake diaries, Adrian Mole. Now these are the first two books in the Adrian Mole series, and it goes on for, I'm going to count the books while you're here. Doodle-doo. There's 8 books in the series that cover him from he is 13 3/4, as you can see here, until he is in his late 50s. And they are hilariously funny. I first read these two books when I was about 14, but when I got them they were one big book, like they'd been combined, and up until I bought these recently, I thought it was just one book, but it's not. So there's Adrian Mole, aged 13 3/4, and then there's Adrian Mole Growing Pains, and they follow right on from each other. Like there's, I think, a week's difference between them, you know, in the time period, and they are hilariously funny. I found them funny when I was 14, but I think I found them funnier reading them as an adult and looking back, because you know when you're a teenager and you're kind of like in the thick of it and you're like, of course he's like insanely annoyed about his skin, but like reading them now as an adult you're just like, yes, that is how teenagers behave. And they're set in the 1980s. And they deal with a lot of issues that teenagers deal with today. Like everything's so still relatable. Like his best friend turns out to be gay and he doesn't know how to handle it. And, you know, bullying his girlfriend Pandora, who is horrible. I hate Pandora. Even if she does call herself Box, which is kind of funny. I recently, well 2 years ago now, I went to go and see the musical version of this. Of all things, I know, I went to go and see a musical of Adrian Mole. My boyfriend and I went, and I was worried he wouldn't enjoy it because he'd never read any of the books, but he found it really funny. It kind of, you know, nitpicked, it took things from both books and jumped over a lot of stuff like Burt Baxter, which I'd kind of forgotten about, like a lot of the Burt Baxter storyline, you know, when he marries Queenie, and it's all very nice, and his dog Saber, but he's very funny, especially because he's a communist who won't pay his newspaper bill. But it's also nice because at the back of these versions, I think this is like the 30-year anniversary version, there's a little like foreword at the beginning by David Walliams, which is very funny, and he said Adrian Mole inspired him to name a lot of his characters on Little Britain, which I didn't know, which was quite nice. It has all the characters and little bits about them, what age they are in the different books, who they're related to. You know, we got a family tree of the Moles with Adrian in the middle. You know, you maybe won't want to look at this though if you're starting from the beginning reading these books, because there's a few spoilers about his children and whatnot. But they're very funny as well because his parents break up. His mother has an affair with the next door neighbour, Mr. Lucas, or as Adrian refers to him, Ratfink Lucas. And then his father has an affair, and then his father gets the woman he had the affair with pregnant, and they break up and they move to Sheffield, and there's a lot going on. Like there's a lot to cover, but they're very funny, and they're very much from a 13-year-old boy's perspective, you know, and his parents separating. I love it in Growing Pains, where he decides to run away from home because he can't deal with the stress of his O-levels / GCSEs and his parents having got back together, and he runs away from home and he just can't deal with it, and he takes the dog and he ends up like living with a vicar for a week because he can't deal with the cold, and he phones the police and tells them that he's run away and they don't believe him. And it's just very funny when he gets depressed and he decides to like cut up all his clothes to be more fashionable and punk, but his granny just thinks he's had a nervous breakdown, and they're just very funny. Like in this one as well, where he goes on a train for the first time to Sheffield and his father's advice is simply not to buy a pork pie on the train. I mean, who says that to a child? There's a lot of other characters in it, like his parents are hilarious. I really like his dad because he's just such a old man, like a normal kind of blokish old man who gets like made redundant and is just upset because his wife left him and he has no money, and it's just funny. Like it's sad, but it's very funny. There's also Adrian's poetry, or lack of poetic skill, and his obsession with trying to write to the BBC and get his own Radio 4 programme, even though he's, you know, 13 to 16, and you're just like, what are you thinking about, Adrian? It's not going to work, and his poetry is horrible. I wonder if I can find one and read it to you. but he's writing a novel in it as well called Lo, the Flatlands of My Homeland, and he doesn't give his protagonist a name, nor does he use verbs in the book, and you're just like, he thinks he's a lot more intelligent than he is as well, which leads to a lot of comedy. Here's one of his poems. Nice, red, tall, stiff, in a vase on my table in a room in our house. Oh, actually, no, that's a poem by Barry Kent, his bully. My bad, but it's quite funny as well. His bully, Barry Kent, actually becomes a poet and an author in one of the later books, and Adrian becomes insanely jealous to the point where it's just mind-boggling. Like, he tries to sue him for stealing his ideas. Is this? Oh yes, this is one of Adrian's poems called No Gyro. Waiting for the Gyro by Adrian Mole. The pantry door creaks, showing empty forlorn shelves. The freezer echoes, morning electric whirs. A boy goes in ragged trousers to school. A woman waits at the letterbox. The bills line up behind the clock. The dog whimpers, empty-bellied in sleep. The building society write letters penned with vitriol. The house waits for the gyro. And that's actually one of his better ones. I mean, it doesn't, like, he's like, it doesn't rhyme because I'm such a poet. It's like, no, it doesn't even scan, may I say. And he, like, the only A level he gets is English, I believe, in one of the later books, which is very funny. I'm actually reading the two follow-on books to these. The True Confessions of Adrian Albert Mole, and I can't remember what the second one's called, When He's in His 20s, which I'm reading at the moment. So I just finished reading Adrian Albert Mole, The True Confessions, and I am now reading Adrian Mole, The Wilderness Years, and I've read that before. I hadn't read True Confessions before, but we'll talk about them in the next video. I got these two books for £3 each in a sale in HMV, which I thought was very, very reasonable because they're brand new. And both of them at the back have lovely little bits of information, and they're both a bit different as well. They tell you things about her and, you know, the author, Sue Townsend. They even have a copy of Adrian's CV, which I find hilarious, and all his new literature that he's written. I have read it, The Wilderness Years, and then I remember trying to read The Cappuccino Years and Adrian Mole and The Weapons of Mass Destruction, but I didn't really get into them. But I was really deep in my tutor phase when I tried to read them. But they are laugh out loud funny, all of the books that I have read, which I've read 3 of. Well, 4 now, technically. And they're laugh out loud funny. I'm going to read all of them, and every couple of books I'm going to come and do a little vlog and let you know how I'm getting along with them. The other ones I bought are kind of in an older style, like these are nice and kind of glossy and pretty. That's a very famous image. I think that was on the TV show as well, which I've never watched actually. If anybody's watched it, let me know if it's funny. I think it was on ITV in the late 90s, early 2000s. I've never seen it, but I know people have watched it and heard of it. The play is hilarious if you ever get a chance to go and see it. And that is all. If you enjoyed this little vlog, you can follow me on Instagram at Lady Jessica Riddell, and also remember to subscribe and leave me a comment if you have read Adrian Mole or you're thinking you should. During this time of horrible COVID, they are actually so funny. I've been giggling on the sofa and had to read quite a few passages out to my boyfriend. And remember to come back for more. Our next video will probably be something tutor related, or maybe wildcards. I've got a wildcards book in the pipeline and I've had so for quite a while. I just need to edit it. So guys, bye. Remember to look up Adrian Mole by Sue Townsend.